The Mongol Empire in the late 13th century was a colossal power. It stretched across vast swaths of Asia and into Europe, a testament to the military genius of Genghis Khan and his descendants. Their horsemen were legendary, their siege tactics formidable, and their reputation often preceded them, causing entire kingdoms to tremble at the mere mention of their name. This empire was the largest contiguous land empire in history, a sprawling dominion that connected the East and West in unprecedented ways. Its armies had conquered sophisticated civilizations and nomadic tribes alike, forging a realm built on discipline, strategy, and an unyielding will to expand its influence across the known world. At the helm of this mighty empire during this period was Kublai Khan. He was the grandson of the great Genghis Khan, and he had inherited much of his ancestors' ambition and strategic acumen. Kublai Khan was not just a warrior, he was also a statesman, the founder of the Yuan dynasty in China. He had established a grand capital, Dadu, which we know today as Beijing, a city that Marco Polo would later describe in wondrous terms. From this seat of power, Kublai Khan surveyed his vast domains and looked for new territories to bring under his sway, always seeking to expand the glory and reach of his empire to every corner of the map. One of the regions that caught Kublai Khan's ambitious eye was the island of Java, far to the south in the warm waters of the Indonesian archipelago. Java was a prosperous island, known for its rich spices, its fertile lands, and its sophisticated kingdoms. For Kublai Khan, Java represented an opportunity to extend Mongol influence into Southeast Asia, a region largely untouched by their previous conquests. He desired Java to acknowledge his supremacy, to become a vassal state, sending tribute and recognizing him as their overlord. This was a common practice for the Mongols. Submission often meant avoiding a devastating invasion, a choice many rulers made when faced with Mongol might. To achieve this, Kublai Khan dispatched envoys to the court of Java. The most powerful king in Java at that time was Kertanegara of the Singasari kingdom. He was a strong and assertive ruler himself, with ambitions to unite the archipelago under his own banner. When Kublai Khan's messengers arrived demanding submission, Kertanegara was not inclined to bow. In a bold act of defiance, a shocking gesture even by the standards of the time, Kertanegara is said to have had the Mongol envoy's face branded or his ears cut and sent him back to the great Khan. This was an unambiguous insult, a direct challenge to the authority of the most powerful ruler on earth. Kublai Khan was, understandably, enraged by Kertanegara's defiant act. To mutilate an imperial envoy was an affront of the highest order, an act that could not go unpunished if the Khan's authority was to be maintained across his vast and diverse empire. The insult was not just personal, it was a public challenge to Mongol power, a dangerous precedent if left unanswered. News of such defiance could embolden other reluctant vassals or unsubdued territories. Therefore the great Khan resolved to teach the Javanese king a harsh lesson, one that would resonate throughout the kingdoms of Southeast Asia, and reaffirm Mongol dominance. This punitive expedition was to be a clear demonstration of Mongol might. Preparations began for a massive seaborne invasion, a significant undertaking even for the resourceful Mongols. They were masters of land warfare, but naval expeditions were a different challenge altogether, particularly over such vast distances. Yet, Kublai Khan commanded the resources of China, a nation with a long history of shipbuilding and maritime expertise. A great fleet was assembled in the southern ports of China, consisting of hundreds of ships, perhaps as many as 1,000. These vessels were crewed by experienced sailors, and packed with an army estimated to be between 20,000 and 30,000 strong, a formidable force of Mongol, Chinese, and other allied soldiers equipped for a major campaign. The strategic reasons for the invasion went beyond mere punishment for Kertanegara's insolence. Java was a key island in the lucrative spice trade. Its control would grant the Yuan dynasty access to valuable commodities like pepper, cloves, and nutmeg, which were highly prized in China and further west. Furthermore, securing Java would solidify Mongol influence in the maritime routes of Southeast Asia, a region of growing economic importance. Kublai Khan had already attempted invasions of Japan, which had famously failed, and a successful campaign in Java would demonstrate his empire's reach and its ability to project power across the seas, bolstering his prestige. The journey of this great armada was an epic undertaking in itself. The fleet set sail in late 1292, navigating the treacherous waters of the South China Sea. They had to contend with unpredictable weather, the challenges of long-distance naval logistics, and the ever-present threat of disease on board crowded ships. The voyage took several months, a slow and arduous passage towards their distant target. The soldiers and commanders on board knew they were heading into unfamiliar territory to fight an enemy on their home ground, but the reputation of Mongol invincibility and the desire to avenge the Khan's honor fueled their determination as they sailed south towards the distant verdant shores of Java. When the Mongol fleet finally arrived off the coast of Java in early 1293, they found a political landscape significantly different from what they had anticipated. The defiant King Kertanagara, the primary target of their punitive expedition, was already dead. He had been overthrown and killed in a rebellion led by Jayakatwang, the Duke of Kadiri, a rival Javanese ruler. Jayakatwang had seized the throne of Singasari, plunging the kingdom into a state of turmoil and uncertainty. This internal conflict meant that the Mongols were not facing a united Javanese front, but rather a fractured realm where loyalties were shifting and opportunism could thrive. Into this chaotic situation stepped a Javanese nobleman named Raden Wijaya. He was Kertanagara's son-in-law and had managed to escape Jayakatwang's coup. Wijaya found himself in a precarious position, a fugitive with a claim to power but lacking the forces to challenge the usurper. The arrival of the formidable Mongol army presented him with an unexpected and perhaps dangerous opportunity. He saw a chance to use the Mongols' strength to his own advantage, to reclaim what he believed was rightfully his, and avenge his father-in-law's death. He approached the Mongol commanders, offering his submission and, crucially, his assistance. Raden Wijaya skillfully presented his case to the Mongol leaders, Shibi, Ikemeze, and Gaoxing. He portrayed Jayakatwang as the true enemy, the one who had defied Kublai Khan by overthrowing Kertanagara, whom the Mongols had come to punish. He offered to guide the Mongol forces, provide them with local intelligence, maps, and logistical support if they would help him defeat Jayakatwang. To the Mongol commanders, this seemed like a fortuitous development. Their original target was gone, but here was a local prince willing to help them crush the new ruler, effectively achieving their mission of punishing Javanese defiance and installing a compliant local ally. The Mongols accepted Raden Wijaya's offer, forming an alliance. The combined forces of the Mongol Expeditionary Army and Raden Wijaya's followers launched a campaign against Jayakatwang. The Mongol warriors, with their superior military discipline and tactics, proved devastatingly effective against Jayakatwang's forces. They marched inland, won several key battles, and eventually besieged and captured Jayakatwang's capital, Daha. Jayakatwang himself was taken prisoner, and his army was shattered. It appeared that the Mongol mission had been a swift and decisive success, all thanks to their new Javanese ally, Raden Wijaya, who had seemingly delivered victory into their hands. With Jayakatwang defeated and captured, the Mongol commanders believed their mission was largely complete. Raden Wijaya, ever the gracious ally, then made a seemingly reasonable request. He explained that he needed to return to his own lands to prepare his formal submission to the Great Khan and organize the tribute. He asked for a Mongol escort to accompany him to his new capital, Majapahit, which he was establishing. Crucially, he suggested that the Mongol troops should travel lightly and leave their main weapons behind as a sign of trust and to avoid alarming the local populace. This was a gesture of peace, he implied. The Mongol commanders, perhaps overconfident after their easy victories and trusting their seemingly loyal ally, agreed to this request. A contingent of around 200 Mongol soldiers, along with their officers, set off with Raden Wijaya, unarmed or lightly armed, towards Majapahit. This decision would prove to be a catastrophic miscalculation. It was a trap, cleverly laid by Raden Wijaya. Once the Mongol escort was deep within his territory and separated from the main Mongol army, Wijaya's own forces, who had been secretly preparing, launched a surprise ambush. The unsuspecting and unprepared Mongol soldiers were overwhelmed and slaughtered. News of this betrayal and the massacre quickly reached the main Mongol army. Simultaneously, Raden Wijaya rallied the Javanese population, turning the tables on his erstwhile allies. The Mongols, now facing a hostile environment and a determined enemy fighting on familiar ground, found themselves in a perilous situation. They were far from home, their supply lines were vulnerable, and the tropical climate and terrain were challenging. Moreover, the monsoon season was approaching, which would make a naval withdrawal extremely difficult and dangerous. The Mongol commanders realized they had been outmaneuvered and faced the prospect of a protracted and costly war. Faced with mounting losses from guerrilla attacks and the strategic imperative to preserve their forces, the Mongol commanders made the difficult decision to withdraw from Java. They fought their way back to their ships, harassed by Javanese forces all the way, and hastily set sail before the monsoon trapped them. The invasion, which had begun with such confidence, ended in a humiliating retreat. For the Mongols, it was a rare and significant defeat, demonstrating the limits of their power. For Java, it was a moment of triumph. Raden Wijaya, the architect of this victory, went on to found the Majapahit Empire, which would become one of the greatest empires in Southeast Asian history, its birth forged in the successful expulsion of the mighty Mongols.